Hello, and thank you for joining my live. I want to talk to you today about how we know whether we're traumatized. The video skipping already, sorry. So how do we know whether we're traumatized? So I talk an awful lot about trauma because that is what I work with all the time, basically with my clients, with the ladies that I work with. But a lot of people don't understand that they are actually traumatized. So that was my own experience as well. Even though I fully knew what I'd experienced in life, I didn't realize that I was in that traumatized space. So I want to talk to you about, how the majority of us are actually traumatized, how we can notice that, and then how we can work with that. Okay. So if you are having kind of big symptoms, if you're getting triggered by a lot of things in life, then there is highly likely to be some trauma that has happened for you, and those are trauma responses. And I'll explain more about this as we go through. When I say that, don't let that worry you in itself. We don't, we obviously don't like labels like I have trauma, I'm traumatized. But what it means is once you recognize it, it means, you can actually grab hold of it and work with it. The first sort of starting point really is understanding that there is something there that actually we can work with. Excuse me. So, if people don't know me already, my name's Anna Rushmer and I'm a hypnotherapist and wellbeing coach, and I work predominantly with women, professional women, to help them to discover, challenge and correct the trauma that has happened for them, in life's journey, whatever's been spoilt for them in life's journey, so that they can come out the other end and, move into this space of life being joyful, it being easy. And basically, if you're in a space at the moment of feeling really stuck, maybe quite broken, you've got big symptoms going on. So whether that's anxiety, anger, crazy insomnia, like I used to have many moons ago, when I started my healing journey, all of those could well be trauma responses. And as I say, majority of people are traumatized to some extent. Now, just to explain that a bit more, we don't necessarily have to have been through, major big events in life to be traumatized. Okay, so this is a real kind of education piece that I want to get out there. We don't need to have had, the big experiences, so the near-death experiences, the abuse experiences, whatever it may be. My background was from childhood abuse, healing, I've healed from childhood abuse, but even, knowing full well what had happened, I still didn't realise that I was traumatised, that, my symptoms were coming from that underlying trauma, which is really obvious now, but, it was just a case of I didn't know what I didn't know. Plus, I thought I'd worked with it in counselling. I'd tried counselling, coaching, medication previously, so I almost thought that I'd kind of boxed it up, dealt with it, put it on the shelf where it needed to be, and these other things that were coming up were just these ridiculous symptoms that, I didn't know where they came from. So kind of anxiety, bags of anger, really chronic insomnia. So I'm going off topic slightly, but we don't need to have experienced, those major big events to feel traumatized, to be traumatized, or to have trauma responses in life. Actually to experience, children are, as we grow up as adults, children losing connection, losing love, are going to have some kind of, trauma impact. So again, I don't want this to worry anybody either, but it just allows us, when we start to understand that it doesn't necessarily need to be the big events that cause us the trauma and the trauma responses, it allows us to then work on it. Things like accidents, families breaking up, that sort of thing can cause the trauma response, and it can have massive impacts in our adult lives. So basically, if at the moment you are in this space of life just being so fucking difficult, you know, you're feeling quite broken, or, you know, that things just aren't flowing in life, you know, you just feel like you're blocked, you feel like you're coming up against, you know, success ceiling blocks in your business perhaps, or, you know, you're experiencing happy things, but then, you know, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you, and you're left in this space of, oh, I don't understand, you know, why is life so difficult? If you're in this space, if any of this resonates, please do get in touch, because there absolutely could well be, and probably is, some trauma happening for you in these trauma responses, and it will keep us stuck in life. So it is going to keep us blocked. It is going to keep us in that space of sabotaging. I've done that a million times through my life, and that is all because of how our subconscious mind is trying to keep us safe. It's learned some lessons from our life's journey, and it's kind of putting those to practice in automatic. It's running automatic programs for us to then keep us safe, but it's not necessarily doing that in the right way for us within our adult lives. Okay, so he's kind of learned these things as we've gone through childhood. So what was I going to say then? So basically, if we're having, you know, if we're experiencing big triggers, so what do I mean by triggers? If you are, if you know that in situations your reaction is kind of bigger than it possibly needs to be, or you're worried about it being quite such a substantial reaction, you know, you might be getting really anxious about something, you might be getting really angry about something. Actually, when we have kids as well is when a lot of our triggers will come up, because it will highlight a lot of our childhood, our journey. So, you know, if you feel like your behavior is out of order in terms of what you would want it to be with your children, even, you know, then there could well be some trauma that, well, probably is some trauma that needs clearing along that way too. So if we're really getting triggered in life, you know, even with the pandemic that, you know, we've just been through, if you've been really triggered by that, you know, whilst, you know, there's obviously some obvious fears that go along with all of that, but if there have been some real triggers in that for you, you know, there could be childhood traumas, probably are childhood traumas, points that need some work for you as well, if you wanted to, you know, grab hold of them. The beauty is when we can, you know, once we've identified them, which is what I do with my clients, because a lot of my clients don't necessarily know where the trauma point is and, you know, why it's impacting them. But once you've discovered it, as I say, you can really get to grips with working with it. And when I talk about working with it as well, I don't mean that we have to relive any of our traumatic memories. So if you have been through experiences that you know, absolutely don't want to be thinking about, don't want to be reliving, just know that you don't have to do that when you work with me as well. A lot of my clients sadly come from having been in counselling and those sorts of therapies where they have had to relive details of their experiences, which in my mind is one of the worst things we can do. But that's not what we have to do, what you have to do when you work with me within one of my programs. So what's key to just know as well is when we are traumatized by something that has happened in childhood, we can quite often look back at that event now as our adult selves, look back at that event and think, well, it wasn't too bad, you know, it was this and this, but it wasn't awful, you know, other people have been through worse, and it wasn't that bad an experience. But what you have to really, really focus on, really know, is that we're now looking back at this with adult eyes. And I'm absolutely, you know, I've absolutely thought these things about my own sexual abuse experience, because, you know, it wasn't necessarily as bad as other people may experience. However, we're looking back now with adult eyes, and the maturity of adult emotions. Most of the time emotions will get trapped by trauma as well, but that's a different subject. But we have to relate back to, you know, when we're a child, when we're in that situation, we're going to be feeling a whole world different, because we're little, we can't protect ourselves, we're going to feel helpless, we're going to have, you know, real fear coming up that we may not feel as an adult. So we've got to be really, you know, respectful and in tune with our little us, our inner child, to be able to kind of really tune into how she or he was feeling, rather than kind of overlay with our adult kind of mindset now, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense as a point. But it's why we can sort of dismiss things now in our adult worlds that, you know, were you know, they were a big deal when we were little. You know, a family splitting up, you know, when you're age 5 is a massive deal. You know, your belonging, your safety, everything could be affected, which now as an adult we may look back and go, oh yeah, well, you know, parents split up when I was such an age, and you know, it was okay. It may not have been back then. So we can be traumatized by those things that we may sort of feel are those, you know, smaller life events. What then happens is with the trauma, we then suppress emotions at that point in time. So then our emotions can't then grow up with us almost as we go through life. So I have talked about this on a few lives now, but you know, and until we can get back into that trauma point and work with it, we're going to have those suppressed emotions, and we're going to have them locked in at that age. So this is why we can see a lot of adults like being triggered and having massive reactions. You know, to think about anger, so really huge anger reactions, and we're kind of thinking, what? Where's that come from? You know, and 99% of the time that's going to be locked in because of you know, something that's happened way back in their lives, which is kind of creating this big angry response. And again, that's that trigger point, the trauma point. And it's also going to keep us, you know, it's also going to keep us frozen. So like I said at the beginning, if we've got something that needs to be worked through, it is going to have an impact. And sadly, this is only going to continue impacting our lives until we work on it, until we resolve it. Okay. Again, I don't want that to sound like a scary point, but this is the point, you know, and this is my big education piece around trauma and the work that I do. You know, until we get in and until we discover what the issue is in the first place and then challenge and correct it, we are not going to be able to move on in life. So you are always going to, even if, you know, basically life is plodding along okay, we are always going to get to those same blocks until we work on it. I've just written a post about, you know, the success ceiling. So for example, you know, we'll be we'll be able to have so much love, so much success in our business, so much health, you know, goodness in our health, and then we'll get to that success ceiling and then we'll see it all tumble down, you know. And it's this kind of vicious circle that, you know, we just see keep repeating itself if we don't get in and actually work with the trauma and resolve it. And, you know, literally this morning, I have just written a post to say, have you not paid a high enough price for your trauma already? So I got to the point where I was like, do you know what? I've fucking had enough of this life. I've had enough of having enough. You know, have we not paid enough of a price? If you've had, you know, well, I was going to say if you've had big events, but if you've had traumatic events in your life, they are part of, they have been part of your life's journey, sadly, but it doesn't mean to say that, you know, it needs to keep impacting you year after year after year, which unless we grab hold of it and work with it, it's going to continue to have that effect, these same effects. And also, it's a little like a tantruming child. It's going to keep coming back more and more and bigger until we actually get in and resolve it. So yeah, my point is, have we not paid a big enough price? I was done with sabotaging stuff. I was done with hating myself so deeply, feeling so much shame in life. I just got to that point of, okay, fuck this. I'm making this choice now. I'm done. I don't want to live like this. I do not want to live like this anymore. I am done. I'm making that choice now to stop paying the price for actually, for my example, for what somebody else did, for what somebody else decided to bring into my life, and those things happen. So, think about what it's costing you, and absolutely know that these things can be resolved as well. And you do not have to sit through counselling, through session after session, month after month, year after year to do this. My programs run for 3 to 6 months, and you will see deep, powerful transformations within that time. I work with a lot of women that have experienced sexual abuse, deep, heavy traumas, and that, as I say, was my background. And to be able to transform that into, having a happy, joyful life where things, flow. It's all about this kind of, a lot of people in coaching talk about having this ease and flow in life, and it is just that. Life shouldn't be an uphill struggle, smacking your head against the wall every day. It should be easy. It should be able to flow. And if it's not, it's because there's stuff to work with. Of course, nobody's going to have the perfect life, but there is an awful lot of work, that we can do to resolve our traumas. So if any of this resonates, please do book. I offer free discovery calls. So just send me a message or use one of my links to book a free discovery call with me. And basically we'll just have a chat and see if we are the right fit to work together. But within that call, I can also let you know what I can hear is happening for you, so that you've got, you can focus on where you can start working and start looking at making those changes in your life straight away. So do give me a shout. Hope this has been helpful. Do drop any comments if you'd like to. But hope this has been helpful and just kind of giving you an idea of actually how we can, a lot of us are traumatized when we don't actually realize that we are. So have a good rest of your